Okay, good afternoon, everybody. This is a little unusual meeting for Indian Academy of Science to organize. We usually have mid-year and the annual meeting, and some different kind of meetings we do organize at times. But this meeting started with the Science Congress, where Prime Minister announced a special STI policy, Science, Technology, Innovation Policy. And DST, Department of Science and Technology, Government of India, requested all the stakeholders to ponder about it, think about it, and come up with specific suggestions about the meeting, about the announcement which Prime Minister made in Science Congress, and get some speakers to have a brainstorming session. For this meeting, initially I was a little hesitant, but because these policy matters I don't really very much understand. But in any event, I will say the prime mover for this meeting was Professor Sena Rao, who is not only most active, visible scientist of the country, he is also, for the last several decades, guiding the policy matters in science, matter of science. So he took a lot of enthusiasm, and as a result of which I thought, okay, we should do this. But as it goes, at the last moment, I just came to know on Monday evening that something very important happening in Delhi, for which two of my speakers, Professor Rao and Professor M.K. Bhan, ex-secretary of DBT, won't be able to be present today. He personally called me and apologized even yesterday. He was feeling very bad. He usually never does it. But I'm sure many of you wanted to listen to him. You have gathered, but I'm sure you will enjoy the other talks also very much, because I have a galaxy of speakers, 5 speakers today, and they'll be presenting their views on this particular area, science technology initiative. Now, Professor Rao told me that SAC PM, we have members here present, also have come up with a document on science technology policy, which is in public domain. It is in the website. I have a copy, hard copy of it. You can look at it anytime. We got very short notice. We got only 2 weeks notice to organize this, about 3 weeks notice to organize this. But nevertheless, all the members of the SAC PM and other scientists who are very actively involved with this wanted have come here today. So therefore, we wanted to go ahead with this meeting, and it's very difficult to get everybody together. And we have 5 speakers. Professor Ronam Narasimha, Professor D. Balasubramanian, Professor K. Vijay Raghavan, he is on his way, he will come anytime. Professor T.V. Ramakrishnan, Professor K. N. Ganesh. The selection of the speakers have been done within some name of this meeting, the Science, Technology and Innovation. Professor Ronam Narasimha, who will inaugurate and give the first talk, is a very well-known scientist of the country, engineer and scientist. He's very strong, well connected with IISc, JNSA and the whole nation. He's this year's Padma Vibhushan Award winner. And he's very well decorated through his work. He's a fellow of the Royal Society, fellow of US National Academy of Sciences, an enormous contribution in the area. He will give his views about this particular area, of this policy. Professor Balasubramanian was a scientist. He is a scientist, was director of CCMB for a very long time. And then he moved to a hospital, which is for the almost like NGO they work, and has a tremendous contribution in the field of eye research. He's the director of research at L.B. Prasad Eye Institute at Hyderabad, one of the, if not the best eye hospital of the country, and he handles the whole research there. So Professor Balasubramaniam is a member here and is present. I have Professor Vijay Raghavan, who just entered, and he is another very prominent scientist of the country. He is very well decorated, fellow of the Royal Society, established one of the best scientific laboratories of the country, NCBS, in this city. And now he has taken a bigger challenge. He wants to do a better job, if not, best job for the Department of Biotechnology, Government of India. He has just moved, and now he is in Delhi, but today he has come specially for this meeting and some talk he is giving in IISc. Professor T.V. Ramakrishnan, he is our own colleague, both IISc and at Benares Hindu University, a very well-known physicist, a fellow of the Royal Society, and he has enormous contribution, and he thinks a lot about scientific development and education. And when I took over this academy, he called me and a special chat with him. He has several very nice ideas, and we hope we will be able to implement it. Professor Ken Ganesh, youngest of the lot, he is a director of one of the most successful story of the country, ICERS, Indian Institute of Science, Education and Research. 5 we have established from 2006. First batch of ICERS have already graduated, and Ganesh was one of the first in Pune who started this. He has enormous experience therefore, and if I am permitted to say, he is one of the most successful ICER experiment in the country. A very wonderful institute. So we have this feast of talks today on this particular area. As you can see, I have given you a pad and a pen to write your comments. So please do so. You can, if you have some very important question to ask, you can ask the speaker after the talk. Otherwise, we can take the questions at the end of all the 5 talks. We have little limited with time because some of the speakers will be taking the evening flight. And Vijay has a lecture in IISc at 4:15, so we have to adjust it accordingly. Now, therefore, we request all of your input. I have requested the Indian Academy staff, and we have a couple of very good young fellows, some from current science, some from the academy, who write very well. Ramshesha fellow, I have requested them to write the proceedings of the minute of this meeting, and Chandramohan tells me that lectures are being recorded. It will help me to sum up, and these young fellows of the academy will write down. So we'll sum up, we'll make a document, and definitely I'll circulate among the speakers so that before we send it to DST, and we'll have it that way. And all the talks, I request, try to keep them, I'm not very particular about time, about 20 minutes. You can go a little more if you want, and with some question, so that by 4 o'clock we can finish along with the discussion and the presentations. So with this introduction, I will request the first speaker, Professor Rodam Narasimha, to come and maybe formally inaugurate the meeting and give his speech.
So I need some more light here. A bit more light. I'm not going to use any material there, so you can just turn on that light maybe. Oh, there's not one. Okay, all right. Oh, good, thank you. Well, good afternoon to all of you. I'm sorry that Professor C.N.R. Rao is not here. And anything I can say can't be a substitute to what he would have said in his own style. So you're going to miss the kind of comments that you might have got from Professor Rao if he were here. The President mentioned that SAC to PM, the Scientific Advisory Council to the PM, had this document prepared. It's available in the public domain. It's been there for some time. And I'm glad that there are 3 members of that council here today speaking. So going through this document, I see there many of the thoughts that we had discussed in that council off and on, and some which were actually also put down in the document. But the emphasis on innovation is something special here. There was something on innovation in that document too. But the policy document that's now the subject of this discussion has a very special emphasis on innovation. Well, let me just start with a few general thoughts. Innovation is now big business. Everybody talks about innovation. When President Obama went to Egypt in June 2009, he said, education and innovation will be the currency of the 21st century. Okay, and education and innovation. Well, it's not only the political leaders who are talking about innovation, economists, and the scientific community as well. In a strategic plan for 2012 to 2017 that the Royal Society prepared, they said science, technology, and innovation are vital to improving health and the quality of life and for economic growth. So there are those 2 aspects of it already, societal on the one side and economic on the other. This emphasis on innovation has actually come from the richer countries of the world to begin with. And the major economies, the ones which have been big ones, have found certain characteristics in the last 10 to 15 years, which I think leads to this emphasis on innovation. There is, first of all, in the Western world, and maybe in other parts of the world too, in some other parts of the world too, the demographics are getting adverse. Not enough young people, not enough people to do science. And the investment made on science, which was at one time seen as giving very big returns, now with globalization and with the change in the world, it's clear that economic strength is being rewarded, has become much more important than it was before. China, of course, is one of the biggest examples of this, and as its economy grows, it's clear that its position in the world has changed, not only because of its economy, but for a variety of other reasons too. But at the same time, huge new opportunities are also offered by the changes that have occurred. And the ability to exploit knowledge, new or old, is not only new or old, that's becoming a major new economic force. And therefore, innovation has emerged as the key concept behind modern knowledge exploitation, recent knowledge exploitation. Well, innovation, as I said, can be exploitation of old knowledge too. So it involves a variety of forces. I was very amused when I was looking up at the meaning of the word innovation in the Oxford English Dictionary. It gives the following example of the word innovation. I think you'll all be amused. Here is a petition, I presume to the British Governor General in 1800, must be in Calcutta. The tribute you demand from the Hindus is an innovation and an infringement of the laws of Hindustan, says that petition. So you can see what innovation can be. But there's no question that these innovations have transformed the world, and especially during the last few decades. And I always like to think of the time it has taken before Jagdish Chandra Bose sent his 30 millimeter waves through the governor of Bengal and through a couple of walls to make a little explosion or to ring a bell some tens of meters away. And the mobile, which now is held by everybody in this country and elsewhere, which has changed the way we communicate and the way we transact in many kinds of business extraordinarily. So that's involved physics, mathematics, materials, technology, art, business, marketing, social science, etc., etc. To me it seems, at least this is the way that I see it, that there's a hidden message here to scientists that people are giving, even the scientists are giving themselves. Number one, learn something more about economics and business, about the value, the social and economic value of what you might be doing. Implicit in that is also another statement which says, attempt impact beyond your impact factors. What is the impact that you're making on the rest of the world, beyond the impact factors which we scientists love to calculate so meticulously. Now, we look at India today, we make about 2.5% of the global investment in science, technology, and innovation. We write about 3.5% of the global output in publications. 2.5% of 2.5% in the top 1% of the high impact journals. We are about the most cost-effective source of research and development at the international level in the world. We have been for quite some time. But on the whole, we are a 2 to 3% country in all of these measures. We have fallen way below China and well below South Korea as well. So when Indians discuss this, when we discuss among ourselves, we quite often say democracy is the reason, but democracy can't be the problem, because the Northeast Asian democracies are doing extremely well. There is therefore a big need for looking at what we are doing in terms of science and technology and innovation in India. So first, therefore, I want to congratulate DST, Government of India, for putting this document out on science, technology, and innovation policy to 2013. Well, it follows a scientific policy resolution which was passed by Parliament in 1958, a technology policy statement in 1983, and an S&T policy in 2003. It makes an explicit recognition of the role of innovation. So the decade 2010-2020 has been declared the decade of innovation. The government has established a National Innovation Council, and therefore it's an official recognition of the desire to promulgate a policy which includes innovation. Well, I don't know how many of you have read this booklet which sets out this policy. And it has many nice proposals, many important statements to make about what that policy could be. Well, one thing which struck me was that it has something for almost everybody. I have a list of the things that it talks about. It talks about energy and environment, food and nutrition, water and sanitation, the habitat, affordable health care, skill building, unemployment as major problems. It asserts that society must be the stakeholder in ST&I. It emphasizes the importance of inclusivity. It does not forget to promote scientific temper, which goes back to the scientific policy resolution that Jawaharlal Nehru wrote in 1958. Importance of skill development among young people, about doing something for talented, bright young minds, about building world-class infrastructure, about getting a global leadership in science among the top nations, economic growth combining excellence and relevance, how it's important to involve the private sector, the need to promote public-private partnerships, about high-risk innovation, about respecting and rewarding wealth creation from S&T derived knowledge. And it goes on, talks about schools and universities, about women in science, about young people, about global R&D, about performance-linked rewards, supply and demand-based instruments, and so on, agriculture, manufacturing, governance, climate change, young innovators, telecommunications, materials, strategic partnerships with other nations, and so on. Does not forget to promote excellence in basic research against global benchmarks, focusing on relevance to the nation. And the last sentence in the report says that the goal is a strong and viable science, research, and innovation system for high technology-led path for India, which forms itself into a nice acronym, SRISHTI. Well, apart from these things, it has some very specific initiatives. And maybe these are the important things, the operational things. It says National Science, Technology and Innovation Foundation is going to be established as a public-private partnership. That's to say, it brings private industry into these institutions. It emphasizes fostering academia, research, and industry partnerships. It establishes a fund for innovations for social inclusion. It promises to support STI-driven entrepreneurship, investing in young innovators. It wants to make strategic partnerships with other nations, and recommends that an autonomous evaluation system that includes social scientists, with a major role for the academies, with the national academies, should be established. Well, so as you can see, it covers very wide ground. It's very inclusive in more senses than one. And there are a large number of very good thoughts about these issues. But after reading through it, I asked myself, do I miss something there? What would I have liked to see which I don't see? This is a purely personal view. Now, this is a government policy document, and I wish that we had seen, almost always, will be and shall be more often than you see in the document. Quite often you say, it says must or should. Well, why the government should say must or should? The government is laying down policy. It should say will, is. This is what we are going to do. It's as if we scientists had written that report rather than as a government policy document. I'll give you a couple of examples. It says here the national enterprise must become central to national development. Well, whom are we telling? If the government is talking about it, it should say the national STI enterprise is central to national development. So somehow there seems to be a little hesitation in going ahead and asserting what it seems to be saying. So similarly, the national SIT system must recognize Indian society as its major stakeholder. I don't know whether they're talking to the STI system rather than as a statement from the government. Well, they should have said the national STI system shall recognize Indian society as its major stakeholder. Similarly, such inter-university centers need to be multiplied. Why need to be multiplied? Will be multiplied. They have the authority to do that. If they have the money, they should go ahead and do that. Some more specific proposals I would like to have seen. Maybe they will come after this foundation is established and they start getting down into the details of how the science, technology, and innovation policy is going to be implemented. Although much is said about support for innovation, I didn't see a mention of the word venture capital. If I talk to people who are actually trying to take things to the marketplace, build it, sell it, and so on, the first thing they will tell you is Where is the venture capital in India? I can't get venture capital. Well, government has some schemes which will give you some money if you want to do it. But the kind of assessment of proposals and a system where if an idea is good and is judged as good, you can actually get the money. I wish there had been more specific mention of how they're going to handle venture capital. What about arrangements for scientists, faculty, R&D scientists, to set up their own businesses? Well, that's an issue which has been often discussed in this very hall. And the view in the Institute of Science, as many of us will know, has slowly changed over time. But I think that's another important point. If one wants scientists to be involved in all of this, in innovation and in making products and so on, the relations with business will have to change. If you talk about, there are lots of Indians who are in Silicon Valley, products very often of the same system as here, who have made a big name for themselves as not only entrepreneurs but innovators. But we don't see the same thing happening here as much. So why is it, what is it that is lacking? Well, there have been detailed analyses made of these. Take, for example, the way that Silicon Valley views bankruptcy and we in India do. If somebody is bankrupt in India, he's more or less ruined, socially ruined. But in Silicon Valley, it doesn't even matter at all. If he's ruined, he's made sure that he's not completely ruined, that's number one. And then he goes on to set something else up. In fact, having been bankrupt once or twice seems even to have been a qualification there. It means that he's willing to take risk. A greater involvement of distinguished industrialists in academic advice in our engineering and technology departments. Normally we don't do that. And I'm always amazed that American institutions, MIT, Cornell, they will want to listen to what some big Indian industrialists have to say, but we don't often do that in India so well. We need a new legal regime that rewards private wealth, I would say somewhat disproportionately by our standards of today. Private wealth that invests in education, research and development, innovation, and entrepreneurship. Well, as that SACTO PM document points out, the growth of science in India in the first half of the 20th century was very largely the effort, the contribution of private wealth in India, including this institute, which was the idea of Jamshedji Tata. But you take Banaras University, the initiatives in Mysore, in Baroda, in Travancore, there were princes, zamindars, industrialists who put money into Indian science. Not much of it came from the British Indian government of that time. But their presence in Indian education, in Indian science today, is very much weaker. And I think we must change that regime. I'd like to see more semi-autonomous national flagship projects. Flagship projects do have a very useful purpose, which is to integrate a large number of different abilities, capabilities and skills towards a goal which anybody can see, the public can see. Well, I take the space program as one instance, partly because I'm familiar with it, and I've never understood why we can't multiply that kind of approach in a large number of other areas. Most importantly, exploiting India's human wealth for STI. See, if we ask what is it that India has as a plentiful asset, where we don't have petrol, our coal is poor. Well, if you go to our natural resources, we are not actually a very richly endowed nation. But we have enormous human assets. I don't know how many of you know that by 2020, which is only 7 years from now, 3 out of every 10 of the world's new workers will be Indians. 3 out of 10. Okay? So the number of young people you will have in India in the workforce will be huge. So one of the fundamental questions we should ask ourselves is, okay, if human assets are the biggest we have, what are going to be our policies to exploit this for STI, and in fact for many other things as well. There's, I also make this, always like to quote this from a report by Milton Friedman, which was written in 1955 for the Union Finance Minister of that time. It's an interesting report. And the second or third sentence there says, the untapped, this is written in 1955, the untapped scientific and technical knowledge available for the taking in India, not the word, for the taking, is the economic equivalent of the untapped continent available to the United States 150 years ago. So he's saying, that is your Wild West, that is your gold mines, that is your asset. So I think that we need a great initiative in education as well, which has to be an integral part of the science, technology, and innovation initiative. Well, some ideas that I have about education, they're not entirely relevant to discussing this S&T policy, but I would have liked to see education play a greater role there, because essentially our asset, as I said, is human, and we should be the experts in using. We seem to be experts in generating bright young people, but in using them for these purposes, we should also be experts. Well, I think I've done my 20 minutes time, more than that probably. So I look forward to the discussion that will take place towards the end of this session. As it says, it's a brainstorming session, and I'm sure that any comment from anybody, any suggestions about the document would be most welcome. Thank you very much. As you wish. I don't know.
I mean, if there is some pressing question, we want to take it right now, we can take it. Yeah. Otherwise, we will wait for all the 5 talks, and at the end, we can take the questions. Anybody else anything to say? Okay, then we'll go to the next talk. I forgot to mention that Professor Rodam Nassim is a past president of the Academy. Our next speaker is Professor D. Balasubramaniam, who is also a past president of the Academy. And he will be, as I mentioned to you before, that he has both experience in scientific research, applied research, hospital research. He's the director of the research at L.B. Prasada Institute. Bala. We'll also take the questions. Whichever way, yeah.
When you look at the science, technology, and innovation policy, there is already a departure, an inclusion here compared to the previous 2 science, technology policies. And we specifically include the word innovation and emphasize it, which I think is very nice. You also, people who have looked at the document will be struck by 2 things. One is, it states that the science, technology, innovation should hitherto focus on faster, sustainable, and inclusive development of the people of India. This is a command statement. And the main aspirational elements of this S&T policy says increasing accessibility, availability, and affordability of innovations, especially for women, differently abled, and disadvantaged sections of the Indian society. This, I think, is a very important aspect of this policy, in that it's not just S&T, it is one where it includes the people of India in a much more direct manner. I think that's very important. Science, technology, invention, innovation, these are all words that are used very often. And there are distinctions between each one of these terms. Science, I will restrict it to what is relevant to what I want to say about innovation, which is what I want to focus on. Science, by and large, looks for causes and does find solutions. Why a given cause? Therefore, what is the effect? You generate knowledge through scientific method. Technology applies these knowledges and produces products, processes, and uses. Innovation On the other hand, invention builds on these. Innovation, on the other hand, is not exactly the same as invention. Innovation builds, indeed, on existing inventions. It also does not require a PhD or very large, intense knowledge that is necessary for either science, technology, or invention. This, therefore, is a much more common, even uneducated people, as they say, turn out to be innovative. The example that Professor Anil Gupta of the IIM Ahmedabad points out is really true. He has something called the Honeybee Network, which as of today has over 850 innovations, from village people all the way up to PhD level scientists and so on. So there is this commonality and this inclusiveness about innovation, which I think is emphasized in this policy, which is extremely welcome. Innovation does build on existing knowledge, uses inventions, tweaks them, coalesces them in a variety of manner, and is by and large incremental. So it is just really a mixture, a kadambam or a khichdi or a ragmala of sorts. You bring things together in order to develop something which is hopefully of immediate use. And the focus is really, therefore, on how this can be applied on a larger scale. Economic cost is also important in here. You do not require a huge economic input to start with. So in that sense, therefore, innovations do fit the S&T policy that we have, and that it would be affordable, acceptable, and available as products or as processes and so on. And there are a variety of examples that one can talk about right here in India. One that we are all struck with is a domestic cooler. Not an air conditioner, but just look at the idea behind it. The products existed. The invention was also there. And yet it took this gentleman to take an exhaust pump, exhaust from outside into the inside, and then also build a little net around it using water and a submersible pump so that the entire room gets cooled with far less consumption of electricity, consumption of money, and so on. That, I think, is a remarkable invention. Most of our drivers use the missed call. Missed call is a remarkable innovation.
Just heard one. We just heard one.
And think of any apps that you put on in your cell phones or your iPad and so on. Every one of those apps that you have is a product of an innovation, not necessarily invention. And people keep on talking about Steve Jobs as the poster boy of innovation. Without the invention of a laptop or a netbook, he couldn't have had the iPhone and the iPad and so on. But we can use a variety of other similar examples right here in India. In Bangladesh, they innovated the microfinance scheme. And right here in India, we have self-help groups that do this. For a long time, we've been doing this in the form of chit funds. Chit funds are for smaller get of people, not necessarily for the common good. It is really for the people who fall into that basket themselves. But a microfinance is something far larger. It is innovative, it's affordable, acceptable. It also uses one particular aspect that science and technology does not necessarily focus on, and that is sociology. When Yunus said, I'm going to start the microfinance scheme, there was no collateral, there was no guarantee, there was no nothing. It was just my word, and my word will therefore be looked at, invigilated by 4 or 5 of my neighbors. That was sufficient. So there is an aspect of sociology here which is rather important. I think that is one that actually hinges on how well an innovation can be affordable, acceptable, available, and so on. Even in science, India itself has had a variety of such innovations. The Param computer system, the Simputer that Vijay Chandru initiated, the loop connectivity that Ashok Jhunjhunwala put together, or the Avra labs that Dr. A.V. Ramarao put together. What is the principle there? I'll make the same end molecule, but by a different set of steps. I'll cut the number of steps in a manner that it will become cheaper for the man who's going to buy it from me. It also makes me money. The whole idea of generic drugs essentially is yet another aspect of an innovation. Whether it is acceptable by the multinational companies and so on, or will there only be a 6-month window and so on, is a different story. But innovation really comes about in a variety of manners like this. I think these are somewhat similar in the scientific or technological scheme of things compared to microfinance or the Aadhaar card or whatever you have. So I think this is important. One other thing also is you can start thinking of an audacious goal. I will have a bank all by myself, and the bank will be run by all of us. The microfinance scheme essentially is one such. And the goal is audacious, because the audacity there comes from the fact that there is no guarantee, I have no collateral, no nothing of that kind. I will just believe on your values, on your honesty, and so on. So all audacious goals, by and large, involve innovation of one type or the other. This, I think, is an important aspect. I want to focus particularly on the health sector. We had remarkable achievements using innovative methods. Just recall the 1950s. India was just born at that time. We had 300 million people. There were people who were dying because of smallpox. And we used a very remarkable set of methods. There was no computer, there was no cell phone, there was no nothing. People actually took the smallpox vaccine, they walked along, bicycled and so on, and they were able to get together people. Within a matter of about 15 years or so, India was rid of smallpox. It's a sociological experiment that included, at that time, what was an innovative method. An innovative method there was one that we couldn't do anything else. We just had to do what we had on our hands to be used and so on. So in that sense, it is again using people's own capabilities, people's own ideas and so on. Polio is another example. And those who are studying today tuberculosis in India, the control, the innovative method that I used in there for the drops method and so on. There's an outstanding paper that's been written for the PhD thesis by a lady called Nora Engel, TB in India, a case of innovation and control. I can give a website for people who are interested in that. And that's one where she keeps on looking at what happens at the ground level. We are concerned that there is multi-drug resistant TB that's coming in here. Are we going to be using the same method? Will a sputum test be sufficient? Should we be using something else and so on? And local innovative methods have come. And this is something she keeps logging in her book, in her thesis and so on. I think this is one of those situations where we do not pay enough praise or enough credit to the man on the job, on the street, who is actually involved in this, and who finds very interesting solutions to an existing problem that his boss didn't think in terms of. It actually took some time for the boss to accept, yes, this is a model, that this is a method, this is a tool that in fact will be quite useful and so on. I think it's such small flowers that blossom that will be very important for us in our innovative processes. And I think that's one aspect of the STI policy that I think we should take particular care of and breed. In the health sector particularly, I think there have been remarkable successes of innovation. All of you know about the Aravind Eye Hospital system. Think about it. It was in the year 1970 when for the first time, India was introduced to what is called the intraocular lens implant made of polymers. It had to be imported. It had to be imported, and it cost about 3,000 rupees per implant. Not even affordable at that time to the middle class people. Dr. Venkateswamy decided that I'm going to actually import one such machine. This is what we call the bottom of the pyramid. Unfortunately, Dr. Prahlad used it for a completely different economic, money-making reason. Whereas Dr. Venkateswamy decided, based on epidemiology, if I were to do 100 cataract surgeries, collecting people in a village, in the school, and I do assembly line, it turns out, since there is no post-operative care, out of the 100, 25 eyes are lost due to endophthalmitis, due to infection. This cannot be. On the other hand, plus, if you remove the lens and you don't give an intraocular lens, you then have to correct it by putting thick glasses. The thick glasses fall down, they break, and the poor man has no money. And he says, what can I do? This is my fate, this is my destiny. Resignation. This is the one that Dr. Venkateswamy hit at the bottom of the pyramid to help the bottom, not to make money out of the bottom. And the way he did that was, I'm going to import that machine, I'm going to have FDA approval for this, and I'm going to sell it for 100 rupees. Today, out of the 5 million cataract operations that are done in India every year, close to about 4 million are really the Oro lab product. I think that's one very clever use of an existing technology, but with a local innovative policy and so on. Our own pyramidal system of our own institute, L.V. Prasada Institute, again builds on existing knowledge. The existing knowledge is epidemiology. For every 100 people who are blind, 50 are blind because they have not had a cataract operation. Why is that? Not accessible. If a man from a village has to come to town in order to get a cataract operation done in a good hospital, he loses one day coming in there, another day getting the operation done, and the third day going back home. Along with him also comes a caregiver. So we lose 6 daily wages for one cataract operation. It's not accessible, it's not affordable, and it's not available. So how about, based on this epidemiology, you don't have L.V. Prasad only in Hyderabad, you have branches, little mini L.V. Prasads, and then even go to the villages and say just diagnosis rather than even treatment. So today we have a 101 such L.V. Prasads all over Andhra Pradesh. And that then means you're able to provide accessibility. And not one of them is more than about 2 hours bus ride. So it's possible to get this thing done. So I think innovative ideas of this kind will have to flower in our new policies of the STI 2013. And the last thing I want to talk about is public toilets, sanitation in India. Our rural health minister said there are more temples in India than toilets. He was taken to task, you're insulting, and so on. But it's true. Technology for toilets is available. Use of toilets is still a far cry. You're not able to do that. Innovations have happened. Our own colleague, Dr. Mehtab Bamji, who used to be a director grade scientist in nutrition in NIN in Hyderabad, decided that she will actually going to move out of Hyderabad, go about an hour from there, and she lives in a village in Narsapur district, and she has made a variety of innovative things, including a toilet, which is used by those people. And the toilet is simply made of huge hollow cement cylinders, tot up on one or the other. No water. The refuse goes down into a pit. It then becomes a vermicompost material, and she makes gas out of it, and she gives it to the villagers and so on. The cost for this she claims is no more than about 150 rupees. Use of this has been for about 5,000 people. It's a small thing. But if we were to take situations of this kind, we can actually move it further. But there is a problem. The problem is the Indian mind. So here is a sociology that should operate. Innovations of this kind in public health are not soluble by using science and technology alone. It requires actually a modification of the mindset. That is a large, large issue. And that requires economics, it requires sociology, it requires psychology, it requires persuasion, and so on. But I think it is audacious, it is doable. If we don't do it, yesterday's Hindu, many people might have read the article by Dean Spears. Why is it Indian children are short? They are short, he claims, and I'll also give you the website for that. He claims because the infection that surrounds him leads to malnutrition, leads to lower development, and it's not genetic, it's the same Indian kid elsewhere where there is public toilet available, and he makes a connection, however tenable that connection might be, between stunted growth and public toilets. It should therefore be possible for us to do this. It's audacious, but it's important. It must be done. We don't do this in the next 20, 30 years. I don't know what the health of India is going to be. 53% of India has no toilets. Those who have toilets in their home still go out in the street. You must change the mindset. That requires more than science. I think we do need, therefore, a very strong interaction in our S&T policy of people who are experts in areas of social science, psychology, and so on, to interact strongly with S&T people so that we can have a cleaner, more sanitary India. Thank you.
Again, I request if you have any questions specifically for this talk, you can raise it now. Yes, Professor Sengupta.
Out of 1,200 million people in the country, 400 million have no access to electricity. So there are so many children who have to grow up reading either in candlelight or kerosene lamp. Is it not the responsibility? I know of all the plans, RGG, VY, etc. going on, but still, out of 15 crores of rural homes, not even 7.5 have electricity. How can we continue to deprive these people of a very legitimate right?
My focus was more on public health rather than electricity. Many of us grew in houses that had no electricity. I grew up in one. It didn't hamper our growth in any manner. The moment electricity came, it actually did further our own growth and so on. I agree with this. But my focus here really was on a major problem where I think we need innovative solutions, not just S&T solutions, because the policy does not take into consideration. I hope it will. That was the idea.
There, I entirely agree with you. Thank you.
Yes, Professor. Yes.
Reckon.
What about antibiotic resistance?
What about?
Antibiotic resistance.
Antibiotic resistance?
Serious problem in India. We have been observing a lot of organisms.
Again, I want to say, because I want to read out from what the policy said. It said it should be one where there is increasing accessibility, availability, and affordability of such innovations for the deprived community in India, among others, and so on. Okay. Antibiotic resistance hits everybody. Here is one where I think affordable solutions are actually on hand. And yet we are not doing it. And I want to find the reason for that and see if there is a way that the Indian community can come together for a solution. I think it is possible. It's audacious, but it's possible.
Okay, I'll take the next two. Thank you, madam.
Yes.
Okay, maybe we'll keep the other questions for the end of the 5 talks. Our next speaker is Professor Vijay Raghavan from Department of Biotechnology. He's the current secretary there. And you are having...
Yeah, I'll just use it.
Can you just fit it, somebody? I've given you sufficient introduction at the beginning.
Thank you. I'll change it myself. Thank you. I can change it. Thank you very much, Dipankar, for having me here. I should put my missed call device away. Yeah. So, one of the, I've been in government rather recently, and there are apparently 2 characteristics of people in government. Is this being video recorded, by the way?
Yes, it's recorded. Okay, it's not recorded. We'll catch you later.
So, one characteristic apparently is that you want to protect your rear. And the second is apparently fear. And that's why, I mean, my rear is well protected in the Indian Institute of Science. And fear is an interesting aspect which manifests probably in documents such as what we've seen, because you cannot say that you will do something because you're held accountable. But if you say something should be done, you can say you'll do the impossible. And that's the beauty of government language. And I think the problem we have, therefore, is not so much about what the policy is and whether it articulates all the details well. And oftentimes, we have the luxury of excellent people sitting together and articulating these policies really well in the context of what is possible, carefully nuanced so that possibilities are explained in the context of difficulties in making specific commitments. The challenge, therefore, is how do we get all of us to work together to implement these policies? There we do 2 kinds of things. We analyze the problem and we give answers. And I think answers are distinct from solutions. Answers tell you that good things must be done. What's the answer? Do good things. What's the solution? The solution is we have to deal with the complexities of a society and find a way to do approximately good things. Someone said that the Pope should always be Italian because Italians appreciate that Catholicism is a goal to be achieved in infinite time, asymptotically, whereas non-Italian popes take religion too seriously and want to achieve it in the next few years. But our challenge is actually to try and achieve something in the near future in terms of answers in a complex situation. So really the problem is science and technology policies in the context of reality. Life is tough, challenges are plenty, and there's pessimism all around us. We will very readily get up and say, the government should do this, has it done this, has it implemented that, and so on. And then when you go to government, you again, you see what the challenges are, and you sort of hedge everything you say. So there's a vortex of limiting resources, processes, regulation, and talent, right? You want to do something, and the frank answer is money helps, and money is in short supply. Processes are important. We need to have ways in which we do things the right. I mean, if you want to get a license, this is what you do, and that process should be implemented. It should be regulated, and there should be talent at every level, lower level, middle level management, higher level management, to do all of this. All of this is limiting, right? And that's the challenge, is how do we actually go and do this? There's another aspect often attributed to democracy, but this is true whether one is in a democratic country or not. Debates and gridlock make doing anything extraordinarily difficult, right? We have no problem in using coal as an energy source, which kills thousands of people all over the world every year. We have no problem eating peanuts, which kill 10,000 people or so in the country every year. But we will endlessly debate new technologies whose risks we are worried about because their benefits are not obviously there in front of us. So if there's an obvious strong benefit in doing something, even if the risks are high, we take those risks. People smoke, they cross roads, they drive, they do things which are extraordinarily risky, right? Because the benefits are high. And the benefits are immediately obvious. If the benefits are not obvious, they will debate endlessly about risks. So anything new in terms of innovation which has an impact on society will go into gridlock, unless there is political will and will amongst us to be happy or tentatively happy with approximate solutions. And that's a problem. So in this context of all reasons why nothing can be done, I'd like to present an optimistic view in the context of challenges. And I'd like to combine a little bit of similar contexts which were there some time ago in the world and in the context of what's happening in the world today. So let's look at science and technology policies in the context of reality. In a dynamic world, our world is changing a lot, not only India, and look at life sciences in that context, from labs to society and back. And we've heard really extraordinarily thoughtful talks, expectedly, from Rodham and Balu, particularly Balu, about life sciences. So the value of an innovative device like the computer is that I can change my talk midstream, so I will not talk too much about anything which has already been done, but go into a more general aspect. And I'd like to say that, you know, we're dealing really in our context with two kinds of frogs, which I'd like to call the frogs of war. And this is a situation, these frogs come from situations in a changing world, and the world is dramatically changing now, and we are inside that world, and we don't obviously see that too easily. And therefore, that's what I'm saying, most people ignore this change, and it's not unusual for us to ignore change when it's happening, and we are part of that change. And this has happened historically many times. India in this context is peculiar because Indian science for a long time very valuably bunkered itself down to do something on its own, and there was great value post-independence of doing something on your own without any assistance from anyone and demonstrating that you had a mind and a capacity to do something. But that has changed dramatically. Today, it's no longer sufficient to say that I ran the first sequencing gel in Malleshwaram and therefore it's a useful thing. It might have been very valuable 60 years ago, but that's not the way science is today. So we must and are getting out of this frog in a well syndrome. It's sometimes useful to be a frog in a well when you are actually building a foundation. That time has gone. And we are actually changing quite a lot. But there's another kind of frog which we are, and that I would call the insulated frog. And this insulated frog comes from both our own reality and the reality around us in the world. The fact of the matter, when we talk about science, technology, and innovation, Rodham referred to the Silicon Valley, the engines of science are not in India. The engines of modern science are far from India. We would like it to be in India. We wish it was in India. It should be in India, says government policy, but will it be in India is the question. Yeah? But our isolated scientific existence is changing rapidly. The world is much more connected, so that's interesting. But this is not sufficient. We can't use just the changing world opportunistically, but the world itself is changing. So in this context, can we grasp opportunities that are emerging? And the problem we have is, whenever we plan to do something, we are like a frog in a bowl of water which is gently being heated. We plan something to do today over the next 5 years and say, let's try and implement that. But the world is changing so rapidly that as the heat goes up, if we don't have a porous system, we're going to be in trouble. And just having policies which come from last year's or the last 5 years' work by others is not going to be particularly helpful. So I also mentioned that the world itself, apart from our intent to do well in this world, the world itself is dramatically changing. And Paul Kennedy, who's a historian at Yale University, he claimed that he foretold the Second World War, and if he were alive earlier, he would have foretold the First World War too, and now he predicts the Third World War. Yeah? And Kennedy says that the steady erosion of the dollar is a danger. He says that there's a paralysis in the European project. Everything there is gridlocked. There's an arms race in South Asia and East Asia, and the United Nations is completely useless. And in this kind of a situation, this is exactly the kind of situation where big wars occur, and he specifically mentions rising powers and their economic desires as being dangerous in this kind of a world. So can we predict what will happen over the next few years? And scientists, like most astrologers, are good with about 50% success. But scientists can be agents of change disproportionate to their apparent real influence in terms of budget and so on. And we are, I think, in such a time. There are times when science, despite it being small in terms of budget, small in terms of number of people in large societies, can be an agent of transformation. And there was a time just towards the end of the Second World War and afterwards, where science played such a role, though not necessarily a peaceful one. The tectonic shifts of the time, towards the end of the war, allowed 5 Hungarians, some of them US citizens, some of them not yet US citizens, to dramatically influence science policy in the United States, to push the United States to embark on making the atomic bomb. And post-war, Edward Teller pushed the government, citing the Soviet threat as a reason for building the H-bomb. Okay? And these are examples of how a small number of physicists dominated the science and technology landscape in America, and there was collateral benefit for all of society from this rather sad effort building arms. So the question is, given if what Paul Kennedy says is true in today's world, does the life sciences have similarly a peaceful transformational opportunity which only some see? And I'd like to argue that that is indeed the case. We have on one side westwards Africa and eastwards China, and these are both populous areas, and China is a rising economy, and we are also extremely, we have a large young population particularly. If India can push to engage in a manner similar to what happened in Europe post-Second World War, with Africa on one side and China on the other, to have common ways of addressing issues in basic life sciences as applied to our areas, we can both be extraordinarily innovative and extraordinarily transformative in a peaceful manner. But do we have the political will to do that? Do we have the technological ability to lead this effort? Do we have the bureaucracy to deal with it? Those are all interesting questions, which I think the answer is we should try. So it seems odd that the life sciences can be special. And why should only few see this opportunity even if it were there? And what are the factors which might cause us to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory, as it were, which we often do? So let's look at the opportunities why life sciences are special. As I said, not just in Africa and in China, but of course in India, there's a practical need. Demography, economic growth, and a changing lifestyle. Balu alluded to toilets. These are all tractable issues with innovation, and if we put our mind to this. And we as scientists ask that this be done As government, we write down policy, there's a big gap in the middle. And we really need to address that gap on how to move from articulation to answers to these kinds of problems. There's also the value in life science in a manner similar to physics in the post-war era or before that. There is a relatively unexplored frontier with the tools for exploration better available than ever before, and we're extraordinarily poor at articulating the value of this adventure. If we articulate this well, I think it will bring together people not only to do interesting things in basic life sciences, which could be valued globally, but it could actually have great applications. We're also rather poor in articulating the cultural need for doing science in a manner similar to having art and music and everything else in our society. We seem to shy away from that constantly. But a country like Liechtenstein can say we will not have science, basic science, or will have basic science, or will have dance or not have dance, and the world will not see a blimp. But a country like India cannot shy away from basic science or art or music as an articulated policy, which is important. Because that brings the last point which you said, why do we go and pee on the road? Yeah, the reason is because our culture, our art, our social fabric is frayed because we don't, as we grow, have a connection with our society and with each other. And all of this brings that connection. There's also a feeling that if we want to solve problems in our society, we must do applied work. And the answer, of course, is yes, that's very, very important. You don't build a bridge by giving 1,000 scientists a shovel each and telling them, okay, please shovel and do things and let's magically see a bridge. Translation requires coordinated, programmed effort. There's no question about that. Yet, there is a confusion in our minds constantly that it is either this or that. Right? We must put in better processes for translation, but we must have ways by which we address, for example, cancer in 100 different ways, not just by actually having translational routes, which are important, which are expensive, which require processes, which require regulation. You cannot, as a country of 1 billion and more, escape from the requirement of doing clinical trials. You can't say someone else will do it and we'll buy the drug. You have to do it. We have to put the processes in place. Here's the example of colon cancer, and WNT in colon cancer. The W stands for wingless. And the role of this gene, the wingless gene in colon cancer, came about in no small measure because R.P. Sharma and Chopra at the Indian Agricultural Research Institute in Pusa, in an undergraduate teaching lab, isolated a fruit fly mutant called wingless, and that gene turns out to be important in colon cancer. And as Vladimir Nabokov said, the study of butterflies is an invaluable pursuit, and the study of how the wing of an insect is made can be very valuable in all our applications. So we must encourage this constant crosstalk between all kinds of quality science and not distinguish between basic or applied. Good science is what we need, not good or bad basic science. Now, what are the problems which I think face us in terms of, in this very, with all these opportunities, why do I think we'll fail? This tremendous scientific fragility. We are unable to articulate in public scientific viewpoints, right? When we see divergent viewpoints, some of which are shoddy science and some of which are good science, we don't question the shoddy science publicly. The result is the public says scientists are divided on X or Y or Z, even in well-established scientific matters, right? We wait for the debate to settle in the West and then accept it. Our scientific laziness is a form of fragility, and we have to really engage. If we are upset with our colleagues for engaging publicly, if we say that by engaging that somehow they are detracting from their scientific work, we do ourselves no service. Similarly, our institutions are fragile. Institutions, departments have become postmen and women who pass money from government agencies to investigators and rarely frame policy and decide what to do. How does one distribute money within? Do we have a way of assessing merit or value and doing something about it? Or do we do it uniformly? In tough times, if we expect the government to fund us, then we must demonstrate that we are willing to take hard decisions inside. The better we do it in our institutions, as individuals, as groups of institutions, the more likely in difficult times when something special has to be done, it'll be done for us. Otherwise, the pie will be divided equally, and dividing such a small pie equally is disastrous. We have rather poor international connectivity. As I said, the centers of excellence are all over the world. We need to either work on the best problems in the world or define excellent problems ourselves. And we seem to be reluctant to do both. And a lot of the problems, we blame our young investigators when they're asked, what is it that we want to do? They say, I want to set up my lab and write a paper. And we blame them for having this attitude, and we blame them for not saying that this is the question I'm addressing. But all of us who sit in committees are to blame. We talk on one hand outside about the value of collaboration, doing things together, being innovative, thinking out of the box, but we don't have institutional mechanisms to reward any of these things. We are lazy again, and we go back to counting in a variety of ways. Okay? So science needs to get out of its well. Society is sort of in change. Will the fabric hold? Will the world change peacefully? Those are the kinds of issues. I'll end by very quickly, even skipping through what the DBT is doing. I'll just stress on the first part on the top. DBT's role in transforming society will be less than zero if it tries to go to the engine room and add coal to the fire. It will not work. The amount of resources it has is minuscule. But if it steps out and tries to find where the rudder is and puts a little finger on the rudder and tries to change the direction of a big ship through innovation, it can. Can it do this? I think it can. How can it do this? It can do it by working together with all of us and thinking out of the box. It's not it which will do it. It will do it by working together. If you do that, then things will happen. I'll end there. Thank you.
Vijay, any question? You want to take any question now?
Sure.
Anybody want to ask any question right now, or if not, we will wait because he has to hurry also. Okay, Vijay. Thank you very much. Next is Professor T.V. Ramakrishnan. He is going to talk about the same thing, science, technology, innovation policies. He is a past president of the academy.
Well, thank you all. I'm actually grateful to Professor Deepankar Chatterjee for inviting me, and I'm also grateful to all of you for coming here and being here and taking part. I know that this is a subject about which all of us who have committed our lives to it in one way or another have very strong views. These views are obviously likely to be quite different from each other, and also there is likely to be a divergence of views on what can be implemented and how and so on. So, and I am also quite aware that I am painfully ignorant of realities. So, most of my suggestions are hopelessly naive and blissfully ignorant. So, I'm in a happy position. All right. I thought that since it's a very large subject, I would try to make it small to my ability to grasp things. And I would like to divide this talk broadly into two parts. I will call them benchmarks and mindsets. First, I would like to talk about benchmarks. See, I believe that most of the statements in the proposed STI policy are quite unexceptionable. I mean, it's like saying motherhood is good, milk is good, and of course, yes. I mean, there are many things which are good, and many of those things are stated there. But you know, even these formal policy statements, they come rather rarely, and therefore it may be worth our while to think and even plan on a long time scale about such things. And as a matter of fact, India has an opportunity here not to be a good follower, which we have been trying to do all these years, but also a world leader and an exemplar for large sections of the world. This has been actually referred to. So I would just like to mention a few benchmarks which might help in making this STI policy real, in my view. One is we should try to enable a few institutions to become world class at the end of, let us say, the next 5 years, let us say by 2020. Unfortunately, this will mean excellent world class in the conventional sense. That is, there is a ranking of universities published, and well, this ranking has lots of problems, as we all know. So one thing we could do is pick 6 or so of these Indian institutions, aim for at least 2 of them being in the top 100 or so, let us say by 2020. Now this kind of thing has been done and is perhaps being done in a concerted way by many countries. I think the best known example is the National University of Singapore, which now scores somewhere near the top 30 or so, and maybe better. Germany, for instance, had some years ago embarked on a deliberate scheme for supporting selected universities for this purpose, and I noticed that today there are 4 German universities in the top 100 and 9 more in the next 100. Most recently, I heard that a university in Kazakhstan, a new university called Nurbayev University, plans to be one such university within the next few years. Now, of course, there is an important question here of why we should bother, and how many different things which go to make for excellence, they could be reduced to one number, and what is the weightage given to various dimensions in order to do so, and the result, which is often very unfair, at least it seems so to us. Some of these things have been actually talked about in a recent article by Philipp Altbach, and I will not repeat them. Of course, it's also true that the connection between ranking and reality is very much like the connection between Bollywood movies and ground reality in India. So, okay, but then, we are in the system. I mean, we have deliberately chosen to be scientists. We uniformly ask people for their publication record and H index and so on. And so there is no way we can get out of it, but try to do well in this system. I also understand that many people in India who administer higher education institutions, who try very hard for these to do well, who feel hobbled by various restrictions which are there from all over, and have to put out many fires every day, they must feel specially strongly about this question. However, I do feel that this question needs to be addressed concretely, and there are many obvious things which have to be done, like appropriate governance, large money investment, which may be of the order of several thousand crores in the next 5 years, peopling the place with significantly promising areas and persons, and ambition. Now, of course, there is this question of who will build the cat, how are these institutions to be chosen, what is the mechanism of support and monitoring. These questions also have been asked and answered by many people, and we don't know whether the HRD will do it, or the UGC will do it, or the DST will do it, or the DBT will take part in it, or there should be an interministerial group, or is a presidential committee in some other name is possible, and so on. So, okay, there are many much more knowledgeable people who will have many sound views about this. But it seems to me that this is a very worthwhile endeavor, because it will have an exemplary effect on the higher education system, and it will probably infuse new life into the science, technology, innovation structure. Also, it will be a clear sign that we are actually aiming to be a part of this global village as a knowledge economy. There is another benchmark which I would like to put forward, which is the idea of grand challenges and initiatives. I believe that we need to have in a large number of fields of science and technology grand challenges or initiatives which we articulate or which have been articulated by other people, and this may help to focus our energies somewhat. Of course, maybe these challenges cannot be met because we do not have the facilities and the human capabilities. But we should try concretely, I believe, to make it possible for us to meet them, maybe over a time scale of 10 years, 15 years. Let me give an example. See, well, I am familiar only with my field of work, which is condensed matter physics. I have worked in this field of condensed matter physics, a subfield in which quantum effects often determine what goes on. And I am aware painfully that though this part of physics which perhaps has the largest societal impact, and then there was a missed call machine here which has been taken back, that is a part of this field of physics. The laptop and the computer is a part of this part of physics. So in that sense, well, it has a large societal impact. It also is rich in emergent phenomena which require new ideas, and is actually the most widely prevalent part of physics worldwide. Now, we are anomalously weak in this area. Now, it so happens that two younger people from India, a distinguished colleague of mine in the United States and I, have gotten together to propose that over a decade we embark on an initiative which may enable us to make some realistic attempts at meeting some of these initiatives, which are yet not actually listed anywhere. Of course, we realize that this is an experiment-dominated field of small science. So you have to build networks of facilities and of people, and as a first step, we are proposing that there should be very soon a meeting of present stakeholders in the country, of some people from outside, to suggest some grand challenges and the roadmap. Of course, roadmap is a misnomer because we are going into terra incognita. I mean, we don't know where we are going. So, I mean, how can there be a good road? But then you need something. See, we also have some prejudices, some suggestions. For example, room temperature superconducting materials, oxide electronics. These are some of the ideas we have been bandying about. But the community has to come free and come out in the open and suggest how their dreams can be made real. This is what we would like to do, what we would like to happen. Of course, one very good thing in all these initiatives and grand challenges is that unexpected things happen in, while you are doing these. And that is the great attraction, one of the great attractions for these. The other thing which I would like to emphasize is that there is a very serious need for reality checks. There is a serious need to have objective markers for achievement at all levels. And the level can be middle school, high school, college, undergraduate, postgraduate, research, and so on. And this is needed because if we are to be a knowledge economy, one needs a very large base of competence for carrying out any kind of concerted activity, translational research, science-based innovation, and so on. This activity, this will be not like our present orientation, which is oriented towards examinations. I mean, there are lots of national tests, there are lots of national activities of this kind, and it is not intended to sort of help somebody to get admission into the next course and so on, but it is more like what the NAAC does, NAAC, National Accreditation Council. It does such things for institutions. You know, it says which institution is A+, which is B, and so on. Well, we should try to do it as a country for maybe hundreds of thousands of individuals all over the country. And this is a very, I think it's a very non-elitist effort. which is needed not only for the student to feel good about what he has done, but also for the institution to realize that a large fraction of its students have passed it, so well, maybe it will have a high reputation at the end of it. There is there has been a lot of talk about innovation. I would actually like to emphasize the necessity for Gandhian innovation. That is innovation which is very essential for this country, but which comes with a cost which is affordable by a large fraction of this country. Knowledge generation can be a prime focus, but appropriate innovation should be, I think, our major goal, which should be taken up with vigor. It also needs to be appreciated, as Professor Balasubramanian pointed out, that this innovation can occur in many places, in many forms, and it should be not only appreciated and accepted, but it has to be actively encouraged. Instead of waiting for agencies and lists to tell us what these innovations are going to be, we should, each one of us, go ahead. Much of our innovation is now and the planned innovation seems to be for what I may call India, and I can see that there is an increasing phase separation between India and Bharat, and this is not very good for all of us. Finally, I would like to mention three aspects of our mindset which are even more controversial, I suppose. One is my belief that freedom is extremely important. We seem to believe that facilities are extremely important. That is true, but freedom is equally important. I can only quote Einstein, who said that imagination is more important than knowledge. The other thing we should remember in all our efforts is the Baconian nature of modern science. That is, modern science is based on experience and experiment, and not on contemplation and theory. This, I mean, many of us probably, being modern scientists, many of us probably, well, even whether we believe in it or not, we practice it. But I suggest that we should believe in it. The third thing I want to say is that it is possible that we are reacting to incompetence, which was perhaps manifest in our country in many ways, in scientific incompetence, by being stuck in competent mediocrity. And this competent mediocrity might be an enemy of excellence. Now, this to me seems very worrisome. Thank you.
May I request Professor Ken Ganesh from ISER Pune. You have to put your computer, you have put it already?
Thank you for the invitation and the kind words of introduction. It's really difficult for me to across after such, very well eminent experienced people have put their points across. So what I thought was I would focus on education, and as it was sort of mentioned in the initial document circulated, the brainstorming is also about some ideas about implementation. I'll try to do my best to tell you something about the implications of this STI policy and the role of education in successfully meeting the target set up in that. There will be lots of text, but please don't attempt to read them. I will only highlight 1 or 2 points, bullet points. What else? As the policy itself said, the aspirations of the STI 2003, this earlier policy, actually, sorry, it should be 2013, was the establishing world-class infrastructure for R&D, positioning India among the top 5 global scientific powers, raising gross expenditure in research and development, in increasing the number of full-time equivalent R&D personnel. I've taken only 4 of these things because that's where probably the role of education becomes very, very important. And in the measures and mechanisms, again circulated in the document, it says that we must promote the spread of scientific temper amongst all sections of society, enhancing skill for applications of science among the young from all social strata, making careers in science, research and innovation attractive enough for talented and bright minds, and establishing world-class infrastructure for R&D. So all these have a very, very strong component of education and research. Now, the paradigm of innovation is about presenting improved science and technology-based solutions to drive social and economic development. Ultimately, whatever we are doing, it has to be inclusive, social, economic development. And so, developing solutions to social problems is like the new grammar of the science, modern science. And to position India amongst the top 5 global scientific powers by 2020, is it just a wishful thinking, or it will actually, materialize? So it is achievable only if there is a complete change in the way we teach and we do science in future. Now, to address the pressing social societal problems in science requires, first of all, attracting and retaining the new generations of creative, versatile scientists, well prepared to participate in the fast-paced, information-rich, collaborative science. And I would put something like around more than 5 million one has to get before the 2020 year. So we have to produce that many numbers of this kind of competent young scientists. Unfortunately, the negative experiences in the undergraduate science courses has the effect of either eroding the student motivation or turning students away from science altogether. I'm sure a lot of you agree with that, and you yourself might have experienced know the cases of students so much motivated but turning away from science because of such negative experiences. So how to improve science education in order to increase the students' persistence and success regards. So the STI policy also puts a heading saying the nourishing the roots, ensuring sustainable pipeline of talented youth for science, and it gives quite a few bullet points like school science education reforms, improving teaching methods in science curricula, motivating science teachers, schemes for early attraction of talent to science, special incentives to stimulate research in universities, and to develop young leaders in science and engineering. Now, how do we go about that? In order to achieve that, you cannot do it just taking it the undergraduates, etc. It has to start right from the roots. It has to start changes right at the school level, up to 12th standard, then percolating to the undergraduate level and the PhD level. It's not enough. You have to even look at what you can do, reformations at the postdoctoral level, and right up to the professional career development and the institutional level. So it's a massive change that one requires in order to get to the aspirations mentioned in the STI policy. Now, American Academy of Advancement of Science, sometimes back in 2011, I'm not going to read this thing, by doing lots of this kind of brainstorming session and interaction, they said that the critical skills that form the foundation for the 21st century success would be these things: information literacy, collaboration, communication, creativity and motivation, problem solving, and responsible citizenship. These are the kind of things which we have to impart to the young students for them to face the challenges of 21st century. Next 6 slides, I'm going to just quickly move, but you don't worry about it. It's taken from, from the website. The science in the 21st century skills, I will skip. But what is important is that they have actually analyzed a student, a boy or a girl at 4th standard level, 8th standard level, and the 12th standard level. What is the way in which they have to develop their mental abilities in order to solve or to become competent later on. At the 4th standard, they have actually said this is the outcome and this is actually what should be done. I will not go into the details, you can always get it. Like provide concrete examples of science at the 4th standard as a way of thinking. at the 8th standard level should be able to describe how science and engineering generate and test ideas, make observations, etc. And by about 12th standard, they should be able to explain how scientific understanding, or appreciate how scientific understanding builds on itself over time, and how advancements depend upon the creative thinking based on what is already known. In fact, they have mentioned lots of these abilities, and there is a host of things. For example, creativity and innovation. What are the kind of advancements one has to have, or critical thinking and problem solving. I will not go into again. Collaboration, communication. In fact, it's a beautiful document in which they have given what is called as a roadmap. In this case, because they know these are the kind of abilities that we had to build up in the early education system. So I will, if somebody is interested, I could actually give the reference. And finally, they say that the interdisciplinary themes will become very, very important, which all of us know. The global awareness, financial, economic, business, and entrepreneurial literacy. Earlier, it was talked about that. I will come back to that abilities later on. Civic literacy and health literacy. These things become very, very important in order to relate the science, what you do, to the society. It's also, this document gives what kind of supporting structures that one should build, in terms of teaching, what kind of skills, what is less emphasis on, for example, acquiring information, and reduction and recitation of acquired knowledge should change to understanding the scientific concepts, etc. So a very nice document which gives us some kind of a path. We don't have to exactly copy it. We should adopt it to our own local needs. Now, improving teaching and learning in undergraduate science classrooms. That is at the school level, you have to start building up. Then you come down to the undergraduate science classrooms. I'm sure most of you are very well experienced in teaching. So the present method of lecture-based instruction, which is the most common mode of science instruction, it does not effectively engage students or help them in developing the conceptual understanding. Here the emphasis is on retention of content of what you have taught them, and over the development of skills. Then the large lecture halls and the large mass classes, they're also deterrent to interactive engagement, and large amounts of information gets passed. It is efficient for the presenter or the teacher, but not necessarily effective for the student. So one has to go away from such teacher-centered approaches to what you call the learner-centered approach, in which the whole teaching is organized entirely in a different manner. College challenges students, you challenge the students to organize knowledge and develop skills. You take them through an active engagement, knowledge construction, skill development, give them a problem-based learning. In fact, some of these things we have in a small way started implementing at ISER Pune. But in order to do learning before lecture, in fact, National Singapore University was mentioned. There it was mentioned that the earlier form of education where we teach in the class and students do homework at house. Now it is becoming reverse. Because of the information technology, they read a lot, they actually learn at home, so you must use classroom to actually problem solving. In fact, the whole roles have reversed. That's what National Singapore University executive, he was telling. Now, inquiry-based scientific approaches, but in order to do all these things, what it requires is a very active faculty development programs. I'm sure all of you know that in most of the universities abroad, every university has a faculty development program. Unfortunately, I have not found that very much in our own universities. Any new faculty who join or they take a new course, it is not with respect to the science, but with respect to the method of teaching, this faculty are given these kinds of advantages. Not only methods of teaching, but you also have to develop new methods of assessment, going away from the conventional examinations, which may not reflect really the abilities of the student to address or the higher order thinking, or even their ability to address the real world context. So one has to go away from these kinds of assessment also. Now, more active learning approaches and the greater emphasis on quantitative skills, improved connections among biology, chemistry, physics, that is bringing interdisciplinarity into teaching, broad adoption of student-centered learning approaches, and to organize, for example, biology education around the core concepts, competencies, and skills. There is a lot of things are happening in the way in which the biology is taught today. So align what is taught with the leading edges of disciplinary knowledge and research. So one has to change our methods of both teaching and evaluation. Now that's about the undergraduate level, where we concentrate more on the breadth. But the moment you come to the doctoral level, again, a lot of reformations are necessary in order to produce quality graduates. I don't have to be talking about this in this hall here in this great institution. Purely by numbers, it is said that 2004, India had only 5,900 PhDs. In 2011, we went up to 8,900. And the document says that by about 2020, we should reach something around 20,000 PhDs. Now, this gives the rate of growth of, annual growth. And there India comes up at 8.5%. China, you see, is about 40% in the annual growth of the number of PhDs produced. But it's not the PhDs that we produce, but we had to worry about the quality. Last year, in Nature, there were a series of 2 or 3 articles, very well thought out, and one of these things, it said, reform the PhD system or close it down. In fact, it says that if doctoral education is to remain viable in the 21st century, universities must tear down the walls that separate the fields and establish programs that nourish cross-disciplinary investigation and communication, and so on and so forth. So there's been a great debate going on, even in the West, about the way in which we do PhD system. A PhD today is really worth it. It says, what is a PhD really worth? And there are 2 or 3 articles which are very, very, greatly educative, and to reflect upon that articles have come. So people are looking at not only reforming education at the school and undergraduate level, but even at the graduate level. Now, the graduate admissions recently, Andrew Hamilton, who is the Vice Chancellor of Oxford University, he gave a talk, I think, in IIT Kharagpur or so, in which he actually compared Oxford University, why it is a, why people think it's a great university, or in a generic terms, what the world-class universities. It was referred to by Professor T.V. Ramakrishnan. And he said that even in the graduate admissions, the kind of students whom we choose for PhD, because you cannot sort of waste resources on the students who are not fit to do PhD, and just because you want to meet the numbers, but he put a different kind of criteria, like students who will maintain a high intellectual level on the campus, and students who will challenge the ideas of the professors and help them to do great research. He said, we look for that kind of students. Quality has become very, very important. Even the interdisciplinarity is again from the Nature article. Interdisciplinarity and the concept of the graduate school, which I'm sure if Dr. M.K. Van were here, he's a great supporter of this thing. And we need to restructure the whole PhD courses in terms of the so-called the graduate school concept, which actually gives them more training in their own area rather than just credit for some courses which they have to finish just to meet the PhD credits. Reformations are needed to produce quality PhDs, and we already know that the employability of these PhDs is actually very, very low. So we had to produce that quality PhDs which can be employable in industry or even in academic institutions, because we expect them to go for the teaching. Now, coming to the postdoctoral culture, there's a great reformation, and I always sort of keep telling people that India, it's very, very difficult for us to become globally competitive because we don't have a good postdoctoral program. Look at everywhere in the West, all our best students go and the whole research survives, the challenging problems than at the postdoctoral level. In India, we have, for whatever reason one can analyze, we have not been able to, although the agencies have instituted postdoctoral fellowships, etc., but we have not been able to develop a good postdoctoral programs. Even it is absent even in the best of the institutions. Even the senior most professors, they have to depend upon the PhD students rather than having a big, postdoctoral school. How do we attract? This is something which we had to think about. Do you increase the fellowships? You make it 1 lakh per year. Do you think students will come? I don't think so. They will still go abroad. Because going and getting training abroad, that's everybody's aspiration. You want to be. In fact, we ourselves, if we had not gone abroad and come, maybe it would not have been this good. I don't know. Or it is the job security. Do we want to give a job security and attract them? But we need to analyze, unless we have now, I was told that even in China now, a lot of people from West are going for postdoctoral fellowships in China. They provide funds, they provide facilities, they're going there. So it's something which we have to seriously address. For example, can we attract, if our students go abroad, can we attract foreign students as postdocs here by giving them good fellowships or whatever, in the mechanisms? Can we give them job security by dovetailing, if they do postdoctoral work here in good schools? We have at least about 2 dozen, 3 dozen good institutions. So those students who do PhD in one institution, can they be attracted to a postdoctoral work in the next, in another institution? And since they would like to go abroad for training, can we build in the postdoctoral program 1 year of training abroad through collaboration, etc., so they get the best of both? and you don't tell them to Ramanujan or Ramalingaswamy fellowships, whatever it is, we need to see how we can increase this postdoctoral program. These are just some ideas, but unless we develop a very strong postdoctoral program, it becomes very, very difficult for us to be competitive in, extremely competitive areas, which involves, high technology, etc. Now, how do we attract students to science? There is some question which every time during the admission time, I meet. The parents ask, why should our students come and do science? What is it they will get? Because they go to engineering, medicine, law, management, they're always, sort of promised a salary of a certain kind, which we can never do that. We only promise nothing but uncertainty for these students. Why should they do that? And all the students who come, today we admit about 200 in one ISA like that, several institutions. Someday we'll be talking about 1,200. That's a small number still. But what do all these students do later on? It's something which we have to worry. Will all of them become fit to do high quality research? I doubt so. It will not even be 10 or 15%. Even in Harvard and MIT, I think only that percent only they go to do serious science. Rest of them, at least they become good citizens, by doing something else. So one has to think of some alternative careers in science, and faced with this problem, I was just thinking, I think it was mentioned also in earlier talks, that in addition to the science, we also give them other abilities, which, sometimes they call it lifelong competence skills. For example, we do not have very many people who are, who can write technically, even the protocols for the instruments or the experiments. Science writing, communicating with masses, we have Professor Balasubramaniam here, who writes such beautiful articles on any topic in Hindu, but how many people, we have? Can be, because several of our students will have journalistic ability. If I call for a press conference, when some scientist visits, I have to give the questions to the press correspondent because they know nothing about the science. So, science writing, business information services, or making venture capitalists, in addition to, after doing the 3 or 4 years of science, if they're given me a short course in these kinds of extra courses like investment banking, or you can make them an entrepreneurship, they can give jobs to several of their colleagues. Regulatory affairs, nowadays, it is becoming very, very important, both in environmental and product development. Patent laws, if they take through a 6 months course in patent, maybe they would end up, getting interested in the protection of IPRs, ethical counseling, sales, marketing. So there are a number of things that one can do in addition to the science, the course what we give. Because from the science background, if they start coming to these ones, that will be a benefit to our own future. So science plus a small course in finance, management, law, journalism, these kind of things would increase their employability or give them very. Now another thing which is also one has to think about is the alternative models to the tenure system. When we started ISER in the very first year, Bruce Alberts, when he visited, first thing he told me was that don't go for a regular position. Put everybody in the contract. Don't do the same mistake that has happened elsewhere. So I've just put this idea, may not be very easily digestible to many of us, alternative models to the tenure system, contracts, fixed periods. In this case, we can recruit more number of people and increase the number of independent investigators. Now, the final 3 or 4 slides, I would like to just tell about, we talked about world-class university. Now, everyone from Beijing to Berlin to Bangalore are investing billions in a bid to transform. Everybody wants to make a world-class university. But do we know what it requires for a world-class university? If we know, then it's so easy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you meet the world class. But it's not so easy. Now, you require outstanding people. You require a focus on research excellence underpinned by international open outlook, commitment to high quality education, and sustainable funding. Now, these 4 or 5 things have come out after looking at several world-class universities. What is that they do? Now, is it about buildings? Yes, it is important. Excellent equipment, state-of-art laboratories, libraries, etc. Of course, these are a must. But as Professor Ramakrishnan mentioned just before, more importantly, it is defined by the quality of the minds, the world-class minds that are sustainably working within it. Research excellence, excellent research excellence. In fact, apparently in Oxford University, only 30% of them they teach, 70% of their academic staff, they are full-time research, because it has to be completely research-intensive university. An unparalleled environment for excellent research, a concentration of great minds, free to follow curiosity-driven research, academic freedom, that was what mentioned earlier, supported by high-quality infrastructure. These things are essential. Sustainable funding. The funding is very, very important. Professor Vijayaraghavan clearly mentioned about, the government has so much in kitty. How do we use the best one? Again, when we look at the structure of the institutes abroad, I mean, there is also in the STI policy something about private investment, and we should treat the same thing. Abroad, most of these rich people, they give endowment to the universities. And most universities have this rich endowment, and they have kind of security to support new or to invest in new areas, etc. But in India, the rich people open their own universities because it's a business. It's exactly the opposite. Endowments provide them with secure funding abroad. Philanthropy is something which is yet to sink into education, in our country. Because in abroad, these things are used to support great professors, build cutting-edge facilities, provide financial aid and scholarships, etc. Excellence in universities, as in virtually everything else, it costs. That we don't read. It's very easy to say, why can't you be excellent? But there's a price you have to pay. It does cost. Heads of world-class universities, in fact, most of the vice chancellors of abroad universities, their 80% of the job is fundraising. They spend a lot of time, because if they raise the funds, then they can attract the best faculty and give them, extraordinary resources to do that. High quality education, teaching becomes very, very important of these ones. So the 4 components of the world-class university is sort of, it's very, very important way to realize that outstanding people, research excellence, high quality education, sustainable, it's very, very important. And these things, you cannot do it as a matter of policy. It has to come from within the institution. Only the government should provide, the kind of environment and the things. Now, when built up with all these things over the years with care and commitment, they make world-class universities. It's even difficult to say 5 years, 3 years. I think I was told that Shanghai, which does the ranking of all the universities, Shanghai itself doesn't figure in 1 in 500. Apparently, they started ranking the universities only to understand how the dynamics works, how they themselves can be a part of that. But they themselves don't come in 1 in 500. Recently, there was an academic, he said that India is a world-class country without world-class universities. He said China has funded 100 world-class universities. In India, we are only obsessed with that. We are not doing anything. Maybe there's some truth in that. India deserves some world-class institutions, as it is a very large and growing economy. There are a lot of smart people in India, but they go away to other countries as they do not find top-level institutions here. There should also be universities focused on teaching, and that should be a big majority. So I have my last slide. I will skip this thing. And what is the way forward? So India has traditionally underinvested in education at all levels. So that has to improve. It needs to spend more on school and higher education now. Sophisticated and important and rapidly growing economy needs educational infrastructure to support training people. Most graduates in Indian universities are unemployable. They need to have additional, even the companies, they have to give them additional training. I will again skip. Finally, the best thing, what is about this STA policy is that rules of expenditure control of public funded S&T institutions do not suit non-linear growth of S&T sectors, and more so for innovation. The country has recognized that funding for the ST, science and technology is non-linear. You cannot simply extrapolate and keep on increasing in every year by 10%, 20%. Most important thing I found was auditing principles should be aligned to performance rather than compliance to procedure. And I think most of us who are heading the institutions, we realize the problem we face with audits, because it is mostly for the compliance to procedure, and they don't look at the outcome or the performance of that. So the system should differentiate between genuine failures and process deficits. This again, so these I found were very, very important from this STA policy, provided it is accepted by finance and other people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Ganesh. Some of the few last slides were very provocative. And so we come to the end of the 5 talks, and I must say we got more than what I expected. There are several very interesting points have been discussed here. Professor Rodam Narasimha talked about hesitant approach in the policy document, role of venture capitalists and others. Balu talked about invention, innovation, Anil Gupta model, Muhammad Yunus model, Mahtab Bamji model, and most important take-home message he talked about, uneducated people can be innovative, which is a very important point. Vijay told the very interesting point, which is absolutely true, that the engine of science is far from India. I do not know what to do about it. I think China is very close, getting there. We are not even very close to the engine. TVR talked about Indian universities, a very interesting phrase he used. competent mediocrity. I like that very much. And Ganesh talked about very provocative things at the last few slides. Now, in the standard of Indian universities. So before I call upon the questions, I have a suggestion, because some of the speakers need to leave early, and Balu Vijay has a talk at 4:15. So I will request, unless you have some very important questions, you can raise it right now. Otherwise, I have given the papers and pencils to you. You can think over. It won't take much time. You can formulate the question and send it to my email address or to the Executive Secretary Academy email address ID. And we'll compile, I can assure you, we'll compile all the questions, suggestions into a document and send it to DST. But before I keep it open, I thank Indian Institute of Science. I am a member of the faculty, but I'm talking as an Indian Academy of Science member, for this facility and this wonderful faculty hall, for all the facilities for conducting this meeting. I requested the director, Professor Balaram, who is here, to give a talk here, but he refused twice, and lastly he said he is a custodian of this faculty hall, so he'll be present all through. So thank you very much for being present here. And I also thank the academic staff, though have done wonderful, and most important, we would not have been able to conduct this meeting had it not been suggested to us by the Department of Science and Technology. DST suggested that we hold this meeting, and so thanks are due to them for give this suggestion, and we could conduct this meeting. So shall we take it that if you have some very important question, you can ask us, or we'll get it by post, by email, because I am already receiving email with lot of suggestions. So that will be very nice if you can send it by email. So we can break it. We have a cup of tea and something to eat, awaiting across the hall. Thank you very much.